Hello and welcome to the MovieBoozer.com virtual podcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman. And joining me today is Bill Leon.
Yes. You trying to be the Micro Machine guy?
And Bill Sarno.
Bill Sarno?
Bill Arsenal.
Bill Arsenal, yes. Hey, what's up, everyone?
I don't know why I'm doing a thing, but I'm doing a thing.
You're talking super fast. I used to talk, when I was a little kid, I had a speech problem where I would talk super fast to the point where my parents had to have a tape recorder with them, and they had to slow down my speech that way.
What?
Yeah, I would step over my words a lot. I'd be like, hey, Mom, I want a banana. And they'd be like, what the fuck did you just say? And they didn't say that, but they would be like, what did you just say? And I'd be like, I want a banana. You know, and I can't do it. Yeah, I can't do it that well right now because I've unlearned that. But when I was very little, like a toddler, that it would be like sped up talk, you know.
I used to have a knack for hearing people say things and like words blending together. Like I remember when I was a kid, when I finally learned that a waitress was asking me if I wanted soup or salad, not a super salad.
Oh, that's you've all seen Party Down, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Ken Marino's character wants to get a franchise called Super Crackers. Crackers, yeah. Which I didn't pick it up until a few episodes in, and I always thought it was like Super Crackers, but no, Soup or Crackers. Yeah.
You know what's weird? Until you mentioned it just that moment ago, I thought it was Super Crackers.
Oh yeah, no, it's Soup or Crackers, but that's just because I've watched Party Down mad times, probably with subtitles too. So
yeah, that's wow. Okay. So anyway, we have some movies to discuss this week. And then, there's a little movie that came out this weekend.
Very little movie.
Well, a little independent film.
Well, it did kind of okay, but for what it was.
Rotten Tomatoes said it was the highest rated film ever.
And it was not called Early Man, which we're going to discuss first.
Right.
So, because it's early.
Well, it's before you get into it, it is unfortunate for Aardman that they picked this release date.
I highly doubt they're the ones who picked it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
It's a Studio Canal release. Studio Canal is notorious for their, I guess, release strategy. To say that they have a strategy is strange. They acquire stuff, they distribute stuff, and it's usually, in my experience, Studio Canal will give movies a tenuous release, or at least recently. Let me just put this out here. Other movies that they've released, first of all, they released Paddington 2, and we all know how unfortunate that movie's release was.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. They released.
Well, wait. On the subject of Paddington, both Paddington films got released overseas before they got released here, right?
Yeah. In the case of the first Paddington, it was nearly a year gap.
God damn. Okay.
Yeah, but they released a movie called a movie called Hell or High Water, which did fairly well on its second release, but the first initial one, it kind of bombed. A Bigger Splash, that's a movie that got ignored. Macbeth, that one got ignored. Carol, that played in maybe a couple hundred theaters. The Shaun the Sheep movie was also not a big success in the U.S. Aardman movies do not perform well in the U.S. And I can totally understand why Early Man didn't, which I'll get into later. But I just don't get it in general. I will say that the Shaun the Sheep movie is one of my favorite animated films of the last decade. I think it's a great little movie and cool because the movie's effectively a silent feature. And the way that they make the humor work and the amazing stop motion animation. And Aardman still uses a great deal of clay. And so claymation, that's kind of a dying.
Don't they use plasticine?
They use plasticine for a lot of things, but they also do use clay in
okay.
For some model elements. Anyway, Early Man is their latest feature, directed by Nick Park, who is the kind of the founder.
Yeah, the golden boy.
He is the early man of Aardman.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who created Creature Comforts.
Is this his first directing thing since the Wallace and Gromit film?
He directed. Actually, the last thing he directed was the 2008 Wallace and Gromit short, A Matter of Loaf and Death.
Right.
Which is good if you've not seen it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a perfect little fourth short film to the original trilogy. But as far as theatrically released, because I don't think that got a theatrical release, not over here.
It got your typical short film theatrical release in that it played in 2 cities. Yeah, so you're right. Not to speak of.
If you didn't know, Nick Park is the creator of Wallace and Gromit. He is synonymous with that brand, and he's basically the John Lasseter of Aardman.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, he's certainly not. He
doesn't give unwanted hugs that I know of. Thank God.
Oh, God, Jesus.
How pathetic is that? Like you're not even going full blown abuser. You're just giving hugs.
But unwanted.
Well,
they're unwanted, and they can, and that's still can.
No.
I'm just saying, like, it's not like he was going super far, like
apparently no. Apparently he was. The way John Lasseter himself phrased it was unwanted hugs.
Oh, right. It's been a while since I read that article.
Yeah, that's not what other people were saying. Those were his words.
So what were they saying?
Okay, if in fact he was doing more, then that's totally wrong. And
I don't know, but yeah.
I mean, if the unwanted hug was done maybe with his fly open and his dick out, that would be a problem.
Who is he? Louis C.K.?
I was. How pathetic are you as a human being? I'm sorry. I used to really respect Louis C.K. Knowing that,
mm-hmm.
I mean, oh God, here's the thing.
We're here to talk about an Aardman film. Let's just abandon shit.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
I'm sorry that I let it get this far.
Louis C.K., you're pathetic. All right, so Early Man voices movie boozer fan favorite Eddie Redmayne.
I stars in The Croods. Stars
in The Croods Go to Soccer Practice. So Eddie Redmayne plays Doug. He's a Stone Age caveman who is one of a small group of cavemen living in this valley, this fertile valley in the middle of a otherwise volcanic and like nasty, dangerous Stone Age area. But this valley though is green and full of nature, and they're this tribe of rabbit hunters, and they pride themselves on their ability to live with nature and kill rabbits.
Sure.
Anyway, one day, the tribe is driven out of their valley by a army led by the Lord Newth, who's voiced by Tom Hiddleston, doing an amazingly awful but intentionally awful French accent. And he claims that the Age of Bronze has begun, and the Age of Bronze is signified by the fact that this army is, there's a mammoth who's just clad in metal armor. They have arrows. They have all kinds of weaponry that a caveman doesn't have. Caveman's got clubs, and
you can't hug your kids with clubs.
So anyway, this is where the movie gets into the soccer thing. Doug finds himself through a series of misadventures. He finds himself in the city that this Bronze Age army lives in, and the city has sort of a gladiatorial combat arena where they play an ancient and much beloved game, which is soccer, which, of course, being British, they call it football.
Sure.
And what follows is by the numbers literally every step you would expect to see in a sports movie.
Oh.
The whole caveman thing, the jokes are there, but they take a back seat to soccer jokes. And, you know, the down on their luck group has got to play soccer to win back their valley.
So it's like the bench warmers meets ladybugs?
Ladybugs.
Here's the thing.
I don't know.
There was an amazing potential for this movie to be this humorous clash of culture between, you know, a slightly more advanced society and the cavemen, and the first half hour of the movie is full of that. But as soon as it starts getting on the soccer thing, first of all, true confession, I couldn't give two shits about soccer, and there are so many soccer puns. It's not even funny, and insider soccer jokes that I'm sure if you're a soccer fan, you will just die for, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of reminds me, it felt like a bait and switch. It's sort of like if you ever saw the other Aardman movie that I feel is disappointing, which is The Pirates, Band of Misfits, also known in everywhere outside of North America as The Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists. But, you know, Americans are stupid, so we can't say scientists in the title of the movie.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But much like Pirates, the movie was sold as being this one thing, and then when you watch it, there's very little of that thing that was promised. Mm-hmm. Because The Pirates was sold as being this pirate comedy, and there's very little piracy happening in the movie.
Can I play devil's advocate for a second?
Sure.
I will say this, and I know you kind of disagree with me, but like a lot of people don't like Wreck-It Ralph because they thought the whole movie was going to be game jumping, and it's really just like three main settings. I thought that I was kind of like initially disappointed about that, but then when I watched the movie again, I was like, these are some good characters, good acting. Like, I mean, I'm engaged with what's going on.
My problem with Wreck-It Ralph is you're saddled with the secondary character played by Sarah Silverman, who might be one of the most obnoxious characters I've ever seen in a movie.
I didn't mind her. No, she didn't annoy me like that. Oh, but you know,
okay, that's fine, and you're free to enjoy that.
I'm just saying, like, yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. Is what I'm getting at. Is like not necessarily what you were sold in the trailers isn't what you get. Doesn't mean it's automatically a bad movie.
Right, but, right. On the other hand,
I have not heard a good word about that Pirates film, which is why I have never bothered to watch it.
Well, here's the thing: Early Man and Pirates are kind of in the same league in that they're honestly not that bad of movies, really, but because they are Aardman films, mm-hmm. to compare them against everything else Aardman has done, they pale completely. Mm-hmm. And this one, though, I will say there are some wonderfully big laughs that this movie has. There's a lot of great little sight gags. For instance, there's this one moment in the film where a character throws a rock at a duck to try to shoo the duck away, and the rock hits the duck, and you're like, wait a second, that seemed weird. And then the perspective changes, and it turns out this duck is like a 30-foot tall monster duck.
Okay.
And because, you know, this is the Stone Age, so of course there's gigantic animals, and so the duck then proceeds to terrorize. It's, you know, stuff like that. There are some visual jokes that are great. There's your typical silent Aardman character. You know, you're effectively the Gromit of this film is this pig named let's see, what's his name? Hold on a second. Hognob.
That's a British name.
Yes, Hognob. Well, anyway, Hognob is...
You just finished watching Harry Potter's. Tell me that doesn't sound like one of the pets' names in Harry Potter.
Yeah, it could be. It's sort of Hobnob, but he's a hog, so it's Hognob.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, Hognob is a pet boar, and silent performance except for, you know, animal voices. And, of course, Nick Park does the animal voices, which is very funny. There's some interesting things. Maisie Williams from Game of Thrones has a nice performance as the soccer playing girl who city girl who joins the cavemen, and it's a typical role that you see in movies like this, but she does a good job, and I'm glad to see her in something outside of Game of Thrones.
What's her character's name on that show?
In Game of Thrones?
Yes,
Arya.
She's the younger one, right?
She's the badass girl. She's the one that murders people.
Yeah. She kills Filch, right?
She kills a lot of freaking people.
But she kills the guy that played Filch in Harry Potter.
Filch? Who is Filch?
He's the groundskeeper, the guy that walks the halls at night with the cat.
I have no clue.
Well, who is he in
How do you not remember Mr. Filch? You just watched these movies.
Yeah, well,
I guarantee you there are Harry Potter fans watching this right now getting frustrated because you don't remember who Filch is.
Okay, but who is Filch in Game of Thrones?
Let's find out.
Yes, he did kill. I just Googled it. He did kill Filch. Filch plays in friggin' hell. I would love to see a Harry Potter fan see this character, because in Game of Thrones, the character that the actor who plays Filch plays in Game of Thrones, his character is this 90-year-old lord who betrays people all the time, as a matter of routine, and he has a few dozen wives, hundreds of children. Is just the creepiest. He's still getting married to women and still having children, and it's just the greasiest, creepiest son of a bitch you've ever seen.
It's like when Vince McMahon was going by that phrase "testicular fortitude."
Jesus!
Yeah, genetic jackhammer.
The spoilers for Game of Thrones: Maisie Williams kills him by baking some of his sons into a pie, having him eat it. Tells him that he was eating his own children, then slits his throat.
Yeah, I seen that scene. As far as you were just saying, the crossover between Game of Thrones and Harry Potter, I am not a Game of Thrones fan, but all of my friends that are also Harry Potter fans. So I'm going to assume there's a lot of crossover there.
Well, fantasy.
Yeah.
There's if you're a fan in general of fantasy, there's a good chance that you cross over to some extent. The main difference is that Game of Thrones is built around subverting a lot of fantasy elements, because fantasy is often about the chosen one narrative, the hero's journey. In Game of Thrones, if you are a character who's becoming the hero in Game of Thrones, there's a good chance the next episode you are going to be brutally murdered. Yep. That's what I like about the show, is that the scumbags often win, and it's fun to just watch the fanboy rage when their favorite character dies. Anyway, we fell off early, man, but honestly, I don't have much else to say about it. Don't bother. Maybe, when it comes to streaming, if you're in the mood for stop motion animation, I mean, you can give it a watch. I would say the same thing about Pirates. It's decent enough. But honestly, it's Chicken Run, I think, is still on Netflix. Give that another watch. Watch any Wallace and Gromit. The Creature Comfort shorts, a lot of them are on YouTube, and they're great.
I've heard good things about Flushed Away, but I've never watched it.
I've not seen Flushed Away, but I can vouch for Arthur Christmas as being...
Right.
Yeah, Arthur Christmas is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated Christmas movies of recent. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. That was my favorite.
Yeah, I know, but is it the Forrest Gump anniversary or something? Why would you?
Forrest Gump ended up in Wakanda, and he met I don't know.
Oh yeah, that was something Forrest Gump would end up doing. He'd somehow find himself there. And did you know there's actually a connection to someone did a meme the other day of white people's reactions to Black Panther, and what they did was they took 2 pictures from the scene where Forrest Gump meets the Black Panthers, and he's like, "Sorry, I ruined your Black Panther party." And then they cut to the Black Panthers. They're just looking all stoic and pissed off.
That's at least creative. I'll give them.
That was pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
So Black Panther, of course, big deal movie and directed by Ryan Coogler, who now is 3 for 3 in my book because Fruitvale Station, phenomenal little indie movie that when it came out, it blew my mind. I thought this is a director to watch. And then he does Creed, and he essentially one-ups every Rocky movie except for maybe the first one, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you that.
And then not only that, but he managed to within the here's the thing. Apollo Creed dies in Rocky 4.
Yeah.
In a world where Rocky 4 is still canon, he made a serious drama.
Yeah, that's pretty tough to do.
Yeah, this is a man who deserves like a special honorary award for that.
to be fair though, it's not like he didn't gloss over any information, but he did ignore certain silly aspects of Rocky 4. Like,
I would argue he didn't ignore it. He just didn't bother referencing it, but he accepted it as canon.
Right. Yeah, it was accepted as canon, but he didn't he showed a couple quick clips from the fights and stuff, or pictures, but he didn't show montages or flashbacks or anything
You're never gonna you're never gonna hear the name Tommy Gunn again in any of these movies.
Oh no, we're not gonna see Tommy Gunn's new kid that he's training fight.
Yes, certainly would argue Rocky 5 is the movie that people choose to ignore the most.
But I want to say this in regards to Creed. Rocky Balboa is a good transition between those styles, between the goofy excess of the 80s to the modern day,
Yeah, and Creed was it was a solidly acted drama. It paid respect to Rocky, but at the same time, it didn't try to be necessarily a Rocky movie. It tried to be, it was legitimately a movie about Apollo Creed's son, and Rocky happened to support him in that, and it was good. And now we have Ryan Coogler gets his shot at the really big time. It's like each movie he's made has been a step up. The first movie was indie glory. The second movie was mainstream. This is
worldwide.
This is huge.
This is huge. It's bigly.
This is a $200 million movie.
Jesus.
More than that almost, yeah.
Yeah, and including international numbers, it's already made a profit, so everything from here is gravy. And with that's first of all, I'm just going to put this on Front Street as far as that, everyone has said everything there is to say about how historically important this movie is as being a movie that's written, directed, and starring African-American characters in a big budget, mega budgeted.
It's got a female cinematographer who did Mudbound.
Oh yeah, and as far as females, I mean, I would argue the real big step forward in this movie is the fact that the female characters, who are, even though they're side characters, they make such a powerful impression that they're in danger of upstaging the character the movie is about, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
And the performances, you have to give them credit for that. Lupita Nyong'o is an actress I've been watching for a long time, and I really give her credit. But
good old butthole eyes.
Yeah,
well, that's Red Letter Media.
Yes, we're talking about Maz Kanata from Star Wars.
The other actress though that wasn't mentioned, that we haven't mentioned yet, Denai Gorea, I think is her name.
Yeah, she's on The Walking Dead. She or was or is.
Yeah, she was also in. I think, didn't she have a Black Mirror appearance or something like that?
Maybe, I don't know, but I loved her in this movie. I loved her and the actress that played Shuri.
She was in Treme. Holy crap! Yes, now I remember.
Okay, that's pretty good. But yeah, she was great in Black Panther. She. My favorite scene of hers was when they were talking before the interrogation scene of Ulysses Claw, the CIA agent played by Martin Freeman. They're talking with Black Panther and Denai, or her name in the movie is Okoye. She's like the general of the security forces or something. The all-female security force that's just completely badass and will fuck the shit. Will fuck your shit up.
Whoa!
They won't fuck the shit. They'll fuck your shit up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean that was a slip. I'm sorry. But no, in this scene, she is talking Wakandan to Black Panther so that Martin Freeman, the CIA agent, won't understand what they're saying. And then when he asks them, can you speak English? And she's like, only when I want to.
Oh, that was a great.
I was like, oh snap!
The entire audience I was watching with went, oh snap, during that scene.
It was like, nah.
This movie had a lot of oh snap moments for sure. And
there were quite or like when she takes her wig off and throws it at a guy and then beats the shit out of him with a pole.
So it's worth noting that the whole taking the wig off in disdain and chucking it the way she did, that caused a stir. There were some big cheers there, because something that may not be as well known to some is that wigs are kind of a big deal to an extent in a lot of African American like female communities, because wigs are
it makes you look. Yeah, I know what you're going. I know where you're going with this. Like you can't have braids or. You don't want to
natural hair.
You don't want to look like you have natural black hair. You want to blend in with the whiteys. I guess.
I'm not going to.
I don't know if it's that far, but yeah.
What I will say is,
no one's going to back you on this bill.
What have I done?
Treating your hair to get to that kind of style, if you are a black woman and you're wanting your hair to be that kind of style, takes a lot of time, a lot of expense and effort. And so many choose to simply wear wigs instead. And this was sort of I would call it a social statement.
I'm out of my depth.
I loved it. It was, well, the reason why it is because Okoye is bald. And that's just the tradition or the culture of Wakanda for these security forces, is to be bald.
At the towards the very beginning of the movie, one of the best lines in the entire film is when character introduces, like, is looking through a peephole and says, "There's some Grace Jones looking ladies outside."
Yeah, right. That was set in the early 90s. That was a flashback type scene or a prologue, but that was pretty funny. There's some Grace Jones looking chicks out there, you know?
And Grace Jones is.
I was going to say, what's the matter with that?
There's nothing wrong with that. I was just saying, like, that was a funny reference. I know. You know, but Okoye, she was pissed to have to wear that wig because they were undercover trying to find Ulysses Claw, and they have to blend in and be, you know, sexy femme fatales, you know. And she's like, "Why the fuck do I have to wear this wig? It's ridiculous." And they're like, "It'll be over soon. Don't worry," you know.
And that's where this movie comes in that there were a lot of these subversive social statements within an expensive Hollywood movie, and I have to credit Ryan Coogler for his writing and directing in this film, and
an eye for detail,
absolutely,
an ear for detail, for that matter. Yeah.
Now, apparently, there was another, according to Wikipedia, there was another writer credited in the screenplay, Joe Robert Cole. I'm looking that up because I'm just curious what else he's got.
What was that?
I don't know.
Okay, so I'm seeing so he's written some episodes of American Crime Story. Okay, yeah, so yeah, it looks like he's Coogler must have been hired to help with the clean up the screenplay or something. But anyway, either way, I was floored by this movie in a lot of ways. The one thing that didn't floor me was the actual story, because the actual story is pretty much your typical Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, it still had to fit the template of the origin story, or close to the origin story. Technically, he was introduced in Civil War, and that was sort of his origin. But this is more like him coming to terms with being king for the first time.
And what I will say about it is, while I wasn't too impressed with that aspect of the film, everything else about the film made up for that, and particularly the fact that Coogler made all of these bold statements with and had these great characters written and progressive characters written within a film that still managed to be a very commercial movie is incredibly impressive and historically significant. So that's
no, I would definitely agree with that. Should we talk about the villain? Because I think he's the most important aspect of the movie in terms of when you want to talk about social statements and not just that, but also character arcs.
First of all, I think at this point, Michael B. Jordan is Ryan Coogler's muse because he's in all of his movies in a major role. I mean, he was the star of both Fruitvale Station and Creed, and one would argue he's kind of the star of this movie. Again,
he's one of the ones that steals the show.
Oh, well, yeah.
They almost all do, but I mean, he specifically just about does. Yeah.
Do not get me wrong. Chadwick Boseman's a great actor, and I think his performance as Black Panther was solid, and in fact very kingly. His character in some ways is understated because his character knows that he's a king and carries himself that way. But as a result, it gave some other actors like Michael B. Jordan a chance to really show their stuff around them, and so there's a little upstaging happening. That is,
I would say the biggest upstaging would be the actress that plays his sister, Shuri.
Oh, absolutely.
Anytime she's on camera, she's like stealing it. She's just got such a ball of energy about her.
Letitia Wright.
Yes, that's her name.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, she was the one who was in Black Mirror. I mixed the names up there, but yeah, she's actually also going to be in Ready Player One coming up, apparently.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, she gives a great performance in this film too, and actually an actor that people aren't talking about quite as much that I'm a really big fan of is you have Winston Duke as M'Baku.
Oh yeah, he plays the guy whose tribe has kind of distanced themselves from the rest of the politics of Wakanda, and he challenges T'Challa to be the new Black Panther, to be the new king.
Now, M'Baku, for those who don't know, is actually in the Marvel comic books Man-Ape.
Oh, that I don't know.
Well, the idea being is that they're the mountain.
I'm not in love with that title.
Well, Man-Ape.
I know the character Man-Ape, yeah, but I mean, I didn't know that his character was the alias.
The way they reference it in this film is the mountain tribe kind of represent themselves with gorilla mannerisms, and that's something that works within the context of this film. Without it, yes, I know there is the danger of some stereotyping, but Coogler avoids that, and I think one of the funnier scenes in the movie is when later in the film when Martin Freeman is trying to talk to M'Baku. M'Baku is not having any of it. He's like, you talk once more, I'm going to feed you to my kids, and then he shuts up, and then he's like, I'm just kidding, we're vegetarian. And he starts laughing like, ha 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 ha. The joke works much better when he's delivering it because he says it with such power that you believe him at first. And then also it's worth noting that the way he first shuts up Martin Freeman is with guttural like
yeah, right. It's kind of like Yondu in a way in the first Guardians of the Galaxy where he's talking to the guy that Peter Quill was originally going to sell that orb to, and the guy's trying to talk to Yondu, and Yondu's like wah wah wee wah. Yeah, right.
It's being childish, but in a really threatening way,
intimidating way. Yeah, right. It's pretty funny. But yeah, no. I think the production design of this movie is probably like it's flat out phenomenal. In terms of the MCU and in terms of big blockbuster movies, this is such a lived-in world kind of feel to it, and it's just wonderful to watch.
I was left, oddly enough, I was left wishing Wakanda was a real place because it really it embodied just, first of all, this great concept of Afrofuturism, which is a neat little subgenre of fantasy that's out there, and also, you know, the aspiration, and it's, I think, also worth noting that popular conception of what Africa is not particularly accurate. There are major cities in Africa that are sprawling metropolises with lots of modern accoutrement. It's not, you know, yes, that is often right next to some pretty nasty, poor slums and things like that. But you know, there is a lot of growth there, and Wakanda is sort of like a science fiction-y version of the highest aspirations that, you know, that an African nation can aspire to. And, you know, being in the case of this film, Wakanda is represented as actually being technologically superior to every other country in the world, but they've been hiding that technology and closely guarding it because of their fear of the outsiders.
Right. The world at large could want to steal the vibranium or use it for, you know, horrible purposes, and they've seen the worst of humanity, so they have reason to shut themselves off.
But what's intriguing about this is, and not so subtle, because it's been pointed out before by numerous people on the internet, is at first the way Wakanda is set up as a country, it's functioning in much the same way that the idealists behind Trump's America might want it to function, in that it is this advanced society that walls itself off from the rest of the world and puts itself and its interests above all else, and doesn't really care about what's going on outside of it. But this movie, the arc of the film is less about Black Panther himself and more about the understanding of the people of Wakanda, that what they've been doing is fine and good for themselves, but they need to learn to accept and assist those on the outside with what they have to offer, and learning to build. I mean, it's said right at the end in pretty when Black Panther's giving a speech before the UN, you know, where he's talking about how I'm paraphrasing here because I saw the movie a few days ago, but the line he says is something in the neighborhood of fools build barriers and the wise build bridges.
Yeah.
And it's a very pointed political statement. And I think it is aimed directly at the isolationists within this country right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty poignant and powerful statement. So much so because it's coming from you just brought up the stereotypes of Africa, where people kind of see it from this one side of the slums and the farming and the dirt and, you know, all that stuff, and that's kind of the image Wakanda wants the world to see it as. Like, we don't want you peeking behind the curtain, you know, because we're gonna shock the shit out of you when you realize the truth, buddy. You know, but it's funny how that a country that advanced would have such regressive politics, and then suddenly this force comes in, Killmonger from the outside, who turns out he actually is one of them, and tries to reverse that policy, but in the most extreme and aggressive ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then that's what forces Wakanda to go, oh, maybe we had it wrong all along. Maybe Killmonger's kind of right in a way.
I had heard that Michael B. Jordan's performance in this is so good that he makes you take the name Killmonger seriously.
Yes,
he does. He does. You actually take Killmonger pretty seriously. It's not
especially
laughable.
After the fact that we've already had Ironmonger.
That's true, but I'm just saying that name, right. Killmonger. That's like some mid-90s.
Yeah, I know, but you actually do kind of fear him and feel for him a little bit, because
I believe it. Michael B. Jordan's amazing. I'm just saying it's funny to me that they didn't change the name; they just kept it that.
Well, that's not his actual name. That's the nickname he was given in the army, but they call him that. He's vicious, but he's also empathetic. Like, he was a monster, but not of his own making. And he's just angry at everyone, and he's gonna take the whole system down with him. And he's a real threat. If Black Panther hadn't jumped on that, like, that would have been a real fucking problem. No need for Thanos. We need Killmonger's the one you got to worry about.
I highly recommend for fans of Michael B. Jordan, check out his run in the first season, the first 12 episodes of in the first season of The Wire. He plays one of the street kids, and he's just a young kid actor at that time, and damned if it's not a powerful little performance. It's one of those things where you look back at what he's done since then, and you can see even as early as that how talented he was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So anyway, do we have? I'm trying to think. What else have we not talked about? This is
about Black Panther. I can tell you that I went to go see the movie Monday morning, before noon, and because all weekend it was sold out everywhere. At independent theaters and the multiplex, it was sold out. I have to use my movie pass, but the movie pass doesn't allow you to get a ticket in advance. You have to get there either sometime before the screening, like maybe an hour before or something like that. And so I was like, I told my brother, why don't we just go in the morning and see, what happens? And we go there, and there's already a line. We not at the kiosk, but at the box office, and they were showing IMAX and 3D. We went to just the regular 2D showing, and it was still a packed theater. Like, in the room, it was packed with adults and of all ages. And I was just like, wow, this is almost like Titanic. Like when I went to go see Titanic 3 times in the theater, each time it was sold out.
Mm-hmm.
So this is doing gangbusters right now. This is,
Oh yeah, this movie is just and deservedly so. And I will probably go see it at least one more time because it's just that good. And something to note is this movie is just, Coogler was brilliant in that he just packed this movie with great black actors, and like Sterling K. Brown has a small role in it. You have
a very good role. Yeah, he does a good job in it.
Mm-hmm. Something that's kind of interesting is, the actor who plays Forrest Whitaker's son in the early flashback scenes.
Yeah.
Do you know who that was?
No.
None other than, and this actor has played Forrest Whitaker's son in a movie before. And by the way, he is not related to Forrest Whitaker, despite his name, Denzel Whitaker.
What?
That's pretty weird, yeah.
Named Denzel Whitaker. He looks like Forrest Whitaker. And he was in The Great Debaters, in which he starred alongside Denzel Washington and Forrest Whitaker.
So that's obviously a stage name. That was just, that's like the wrestler Uhaa Nation. When he moves to WWE, they call him Apollo Crews.
Oh, yeah.
Apollo Creed, Terry Crews. And now he's just Apollo because WWE's like, we don't want to get sued by Terry Crews. Because now
was that what it is?
Terry Crews just had tweeted recently, like, yeah, they took my name and gave it to a wrestler. So but that's kind of like, oh, we want to avoid that.
I mean, but that I always thought of Apollo Crews' name being like, I like Terry Crews. It's like it's an endearing thing that he did. It
was, but Terry Crews doesn't see it that way, so they're like, let's just avoid any trouble.
I'm just glad to see Denzel Whitaker and more stuff because he was actually really good in the Great Debaters, and he had a small role in Bad Lieutenant Protocol New Orleans, and then
who did he play in that? He played the football player.
Daryl. I forget like what his character did in the movie, but I remember he was in it.
How is Forrest Whitaker in this?
He's okay.
He's
stoic and he's emotional. He plays the elder, one of the elders.
He plays basically the same character that he plays in Rogue One.
Oh,
just not crazy.
I mean, he plays the sort of wizened, a little bit on edge, but yeah, not crazy in this case, but elder. And guess what? Spoiler alert! Just like Rogue One, he dies for no really particularly good reason.
Actually, I think the good reason he dies, there is a good reason he dies. Killmonger, is like, you basically did nothing while my dad died. So fuck you too, uncle.
Right, but he sacrifices himself to very little
end. Yeah, I know, but so what? Killmonger doesn't care about that.
Right. No. Yeah. I'm just saying it's it's become the thing that if you need Forrest Whitaker to play the elder statesman who dies, yep,
that's what he'll do. Yeah, there you go.
But anyway, and then you had here's a blast from the indie past. The River Tribe Elder is a small role in this film, played by Isaac de Bancole, who's a French, a black French actor.
Wasn't he in Jim Jarmusch's movie?
He's in Ghost Dog. He's in Limits of Control. He's
Limits of Control. That's
he's in a lot of Jim Jarmusch actually.
Yeah.
He was in Calvary.
Okay.
The John Michael McDonough movie.
Oh yeah.
He's one of those actors who's Diving Bell and the Butterfly. A lot of indie flicks, but I dig him. He's a really good actor.
He's good, yeah.
Underrated, and so I was glad to see him in getting a role in a big Hollywood movie, because he's normally in the small.
Sure.
So, other than that,
Black Panther. Yeah, this is the real deal, folks.
Yeah. Oh, and for those who don't recognize him in this movie, by the way, the River Tribe Elder is the guy who has the plate in his lip.
Oh yeah. A few people kind of giggled at that at first, but they kind of got it very quickly. They were like, "Oh, right, that's just African culture."
Oh yeah, it's a reference right out of African culture, and I can understand people laughing because they don't understand it and they've never seen it before or something like that. But there are cultures where that is a sign of your authority. And anyway, so that being said, we'll go ahead and move off of Black Panther. I think we've talked it to death at this point, because not only that, I'm sure whenever Hawk Ripjaw blesses us with his appearance, that he will be wanting to talk about his opinion on the film. So. All right. So another thing we did this weekend, the three of us did a double feature on Saturday night.
And Bill Leon has joined us again. So
I'm back.
Bill Leon, we did a double feature this weekend of Shock Treatment and Polyester that you hosted.
Yes. And I actually, when I picked these two movies, didn't even realize they'd come out the same year, which was 81. That was just a happy little coincidence. But I had wanted to share, and I'm actually, the main reason I screened Shock Treatment was so Hawk could see it. But I'm glad that Will and Ken got to see it as well, just because I think it is kind of a movie that doesn't get enough love, especially with the rabid fandom of Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I love, but I think there's more substance to Shock Treatment. In terms of like the story and
very
the
satirical. Yeah.
There's this line, Bill, that you would have loved. I'm actually, you should check this movie out at some point, but there's this line where these two characters are like, they're trying to stake out the studio. They're like hanging out, and the security guard comes in and startles them and turns off the lights. And he holds up this bird by its feet, and he goes, "Does this bird belong to you?" It has no context. It does not come back later. It's just a weird little thing that happened. And because of little quirky moments that the movie like that has, I've seen people, especially back in the 80s when they reviewed it, say, "Oh, this is a cult film for the sake of being a cult film." But shock treatment, I feel like as it gets older and reality television is now a thing, it's more relevant today than it was then.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It envisioned reality TV as becoming like a thing, and really within shock treatment, what's interesting is literally everything you're seeing, even stuff that's ostensibly behind the scenes, is kind of being filmed, and so you can't get away from it. So, Bill, since you're the one who recommended it, why don't you give us a quick little overview of the film?
So one of the other reasons I do kind of like love this movie a lot is just because it does things so differently, to the point where like people call it the Rocky Horror sequel, but it is not concerned with being a Rocky Horror sequel at all. The town of Denton that the wedding in the beginning of Rocky Horror takes place in, it's just a TV studio now. The whole town is a TV studio. We don't know why. You don't need to know why. You don't need to have that explanation. It doesn't matter. But some people, especially like the Tim Curry fans, they just cannot accept the fact that Tim Curry is not in this movie. And I'm like, oh boy, you're not a movie fan. You're a Tim Curry fan. So the whole town is a TV studio. Brad and Janet, the protagonists from the previous film, they show up to watch this game show called Marriage Maze, and the host calls them down to be on the show. And the host, who is not a medical doctor, he doesn't have any right to be given prognoses. He's just like, yeah, Brad's an emotional cripple. We gotta put him into therapy. And they put him in a straitjacket and they wheelchair him back to this other show that's on the network, DTV, called Dentonvale, which is hosted by these two eccentric brother and sister medical doctors. I don't know what you'd call them, because I think it's revealed at the end that they're frauds. That's kind of the overview of it. Like Janet starts to become more popular, and it's really just this whole thing of like their society is based on television and popularity and ratings. And it's a musical, and the songs in it are arguably superior to the songs in Rocky Horror. They're both fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to talk bad about the Rocky Horror songs, but I kind of lean more towards this soundtrack.
I would say both soundtracks have songs that I love and songs that I could do without.
Right.
I haven't listened to them, side by side, but I would say Rocky Horror maybe has the highest highs in terms of toe tap and hummability.
Yeah.
But I would say the writing, the actual lyricism in shock treatment is sharper, more pointed, and so that's sort of where the divide occurs.
The opening song of the movie is called Denton, USA, and it's all about how Denton is the all-American town. We're white bread. We're really pure. We don't sin. And the opening line is, "We have happy hearts and smiling faces and tolerance for the ethnic races." Those are the opening lines of the song.
Which is an interesting thing to say, considering all races are ethnic.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's automatically assuming that other.
It's hard to explain, and that's the thing, is why I just wanted you guys to watch it, because like if you have it described to you, it's not the same experience as seeing it,
Yeah, no, it's an enjoyable movie, and I might watch it again at some point.
I hope you do, because it's a personal favorite of mine. It's
you know what? I like Charles Gray, and seeing Charles Gray again.
He has a larger role in this than he did in Rocky.
Yeah, he's only in 3 scenes in Rocky?
Well, he's the narrator, so he's in. I don't know, it's more. He pops up more than 3 times, but it's always in the same location, and he's just there to give exposition.
Mm-hmm. In
this movie, he actually does play a character and gets involved, and I mentioned the wedding at the beginning of Rocky Horror. That couple is now separated, and Charles Gray is with the bride, Betty. And they have an interesting dynamic, especially like back in 1981, a younger woman and an older man like that. Like, and the movie doesn't portray it as like they shouldn't be together. This is creepy. It's just normal. Like they love each other. And the movie does a lot of progressive stuff like that. Not so much with race, because that's, you can't tackle too much at once. But, you know, as far as like
Black Panther certainly did. But,
well, that was 30 years later.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, this movie is just astoundingly ahead of its time in parts. I mean, overall, it is still a cult film. It is still a product of Jim Sharman and Lou Adler and Richard O'Brien. But just the themes and the stories that they're trying to tell here is like Ken said, they really predicted reality television before it ever existed. Even in 1981, we didn't have Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous yet on television, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And this movie is like, it's hard to explain. I don't know. Like I think it's wonderful. I recommend it.
All right, so why don't we move on then to Polyester?
Now, Polyester is yeah, great songs in this. But I want to point out that for me, this is a very interesting film just because you two had never seen it. This was my first John Waters film. I had not seen anything of his prior to this. And this is an interesting way in to his filmmaking, I feel like.
Yeah, it's almost like watching a trauma film, but a lot more dry and subdued in its subversiveness. I mean,
yeah.
Yes, John Waters is the subtle trauma. What?
I know, right? But in this movie, it kind of is true. You know, in this movie, not Pink Flamingos, not multiple maniacs. This movie specifically. He's more in those other movies. He's more trauma than trauma.
Maybe a little bit of Serial Mom has some trauma vibes, but
I thought you hadn't seen Serial Mom.
I watched it. Shit, when did I watched it like Friday. I love that fucking movie, dude. The sun will come out tomorrow kill scene just slayed me. I loved it so much.
I love the punk rock scene where they just like spitting fire.
Serial Mom.
Yeah. and then, you know, just don't wear white after Labor Day, goddamn.
Oh, dude, yes. That is a fucking, like, obviously I haven't watched Crybaby yet. Well, I've watched the first 20 or so minutes of it and I fell asleep. But and that's not the movie's fault. I had just gotten off a long shift at work and I was sitting in a comfortable chair. But Serial Mom is like, I can't think of a single thing I would change about it.
Yeah, Serial Mom is wonderful. And the funny thing is my first experience with that movie was actually watching it edited for television on USA in the 90s.
Oh my God, I can't imagine what that's like.
It was still fun. And I remember my parents enjoyed it, which is like, watching a John Waters film with my parents in the room is like, what?
I had Polyester on like 2 weeks ago when I first started getting into John Waters stuff. And my mom was here watching Polyester with me. She's on her computer doing her Ancestry.com shit. She's not really paying attention, but she'll like look over and see what's on the screen. And she goes, you know, you watch some weird shit.
Yeah. And Polyester is, don't get me wrong, it's certainly a John Waters film, but compared to where John Waters has gone, it's fairly subdued.
Right. It's still fucked up, but it's subdued, yeah.
Yes, but the whole parody of a soap opera thing really lends itself to being more subdued.
And what made it weird too was the odorama.
The odorama is weird, and I always laugh at any scene where Divine is sniffing around like a dog.
Yeah, the odorama gimmick. It's just a gimmick that's there I think, to add to the humor, because it has no purpose in the film whatsoever.
Right, it's just fluff that he thought that would be funny.
Well, that, and John Waters is a big William Castle fan, who was
exactly
the guy back in the day.
I think Divine is. I don't think it can be stated how perfect Divine was for this movie and for any John Waters film.
Francine Fishpaw.
We ought to have a William Castle night where we watch a couple of his classics.
I'd be down for. I don't think I've ever seen any of his films all the way through.
Have you guys seen the documentary about him?
I've heard Gilbert Gottfried do the Tingler bit.
Oh God, the Tingler! You have that is a must watch. William
the
Castle.
Tingler is loose in the theater.
Yes, scream for your life. Oh yeah, that movie is great, and then any like the House on Haunted Hill, it's
so Polyester. It's important in John Waters' filmography in that it was the first time he ever worked with Debbie Harry, who popped up later in Hairspray.
Mm-hmm.
She worked on the song Polyester that opens the film, sung by Tab Hunter, who acts in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Murray sings a song in this, and apparently I've read that John Waters was not happy about that at all. He did not like mainstream comedy. He did not like SNL.
Has he come to terms with it?
I'm sure he has at this point, but I don't think him and Bill Murray have ever met face to face that I know of. I could be totally wrong, but in 1981 that would make sense for him. Because
I get it.
But I do enjoy the song that Bill Murray sings in this.
Honestly, I thought it was funny the way it was being sung, where it's slightly off, but it's clearly like it's Bill Murray trying to sing on key.
Mm-hmm.
and it's always funnier when someone who can't sing manages just to skirt being on key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
so what is this film about? I feel like we haven't really gotten into what it's about.
I don't think it really matters. I mean, it's Francine Fishpaw.
I mean, it's
misery porn, is what it is. It's tragical.
It's a story. It's the story of Francine Fishpaw, whose life is just coming apart at the seams because her husband is cheating on her. Her children are awful human beings. The daughter is promiscuous, and
the son has a weird foot fetish.
Yeah,
isn't the girlfriend's boyfriend named Bozo?
I think
Toxic Avenger Trauma references. Well, not reference because Toxic Avenger came out later, but maybe Trauma was thinking Bozo from Polyester. I don't know.
I think it was Bobo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the scene where the news people are trying to interview people coming out of the porno theater.
Yeah.
The one dude's just like zipping his pants up, trying to get past. Like, oh, that is one of the like most legitimately funny visual jokes I've ever seen in a John Waters movie. Oh, that's not somebody getting beaten with a lamb chop.
It's simple and it rings home because here's the thing. Everyone knows what people do in a porno theater.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was always confused by the fact that Pee Wee Herman got friggin' like arrested for it, because that's like, wow, they arrested one person for doing what literally everyone else who's ever gone.
Let's be fair though. The year was the early 90s. Paul Rubens could afford a laser disc, a VHS. He could go watch porno at his house and jerk off and not do it out in public. So like that's kind of weird that he chose to do it there instead of doing it in private.
But not everyone is Travis Bickle, not everyone is going to go to the porno theater just to watch the porno.
Just sit there and watch it.
And have a cinematic experience,
Right.
Usually they're there to whack off,
Yeah.
Or to catch some tail,
And they're always in like seedy parts of town. Like, I don't even know how.
There was this period of time in the 70s called porno chic. When it was popular to go to the movies and
you mentioned that period, that fad, like Pink Flamingos would have never gotten released if not for porno chic.
And here's the thing. It's worth noting that yes, it was technically considered okay for people to go and see that movie in mainstream theaters, but people who went to see that movie in mainstream theaters were totally jacking off. I'm sorry.
We're not talking about Pink Flamingos, are we?
I guarantee you people have checked out to Pink Flamingos.
That's weird. That's oh God.
Well, here's the thing, Bill.
I guarantee you that movie enlightened a lot of people into specific fetishes they never knew they had.
I'd be willing to bet, regardless of his intentions behind the film, John Waters is probably a little proud that some people somewhere have done that to his film.
Isn't there a line, Bill, in Divine Trash where he's like, you got to be pretty fucked up to go jerk off to Pink Flamingos?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's a line in Divine Trash that the guy says.
Well, that's true. But
you know what I liked in Divine Trash? I liked the priest who was allowing John Waters to show his early films in his church.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's great.
He was like, yeah, he's just a young kid, you know.
Well, the way they talk about the community in Baltimore, like embracing his creativity, like that's awesome.
Oh yeah, he is.
But also, I gotta say,
hero there.
Lighting a trailer on fire in the middle of the woods and not alerting the local fire department. That's no good. You could have burned the woods down.
The teeming metropolis known as Downtown Balmer. That line kills me the way you read it.
Oh yeah, I laugh.
Downtown Balmer.
Well, and Baltimore does have a huge forested park in the middle of it, and it is notorious actually because it's notorious as a dumping ground for bodies. There's actually an entire YouTube like mini documentary. It's like 40 minutes long where this guy goes to does some urban exploring through it, and oh my God, every corner of it looks creepy.
Let's talk about the fish paw's son. I don't remember his first name, but he goes around. He gets off on stomping on women's feet, and they treat it like he's some kind of serial killer or something, like the Baltimore Foot Stomper.
Yep.
Right.
Which is like, I don't know. That's just like a fun little absurd twist on something like that to me. Like he's not raping these women. He's just stomping on their feet.
And Edith Massey plays her best friend, Francine's best friend.
What's her name?
Who's rich now, and she always looks at
Cuddles. Her name's Cuddles.
Yeah, right. And she always looks at Francine like, what's wrong, Francine? Let's go shopping. And Francine's like, oh, I'm an alcoholic, Cuddles.
Yes.
My life is falling apart. Well, let's just go shopping.
Oh, by the way, just
come on, Hines. Pick her up, Hines.
Just so you know, Bill, I just for the hell of it Googled foot stomper and fetish.
Oh God.
Wow. It's a thing. It's definitely a thing.
A 2016 article from the Daily Beast about a targeter of Texas women named the serial foot stomper. Yeah.
John Waters movies to predict in the future now.
Yeah, no.
So,
right?
Yeah, his MO is to ride up to an unsuspecting female on his bicycle.
Bicycle?
Give their toes a quick stomp and then take off.
I'm not surprised. It's gross, but I'm not surprised.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. It's awful. There's some gross and sick people out there, and this person needs professional help. Seriously.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
So anyway, polyester.
Would you guys recommend people watch this?
Yeah, hell yeah, sure.
Okay.
As with all John Waters films, people of a certain proclivity, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
A certain proclivity.
It's one of my favorites that I've seen from him, but I think having it be the first film of his that I saw really kind of gives it this special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's one of his better films. Having now seen it, it's I think a well-made little descent into this poor lady's personal hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to give credit where credit's due. Tab Hunter is in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Especially the turn at the end. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think that Tab Hunter must have felt really at home making this movie, because I'm pretty sure he was still in the closet when this movie was being made, and he spent his entire career prior to this as a closet gay man playing these tough guy roles and having to pretend. I mean, like if you remember,
I honestly didn't know that about him. I other than he used to be some kind of teen heartthrob, I really didn't know who he was, because it's so before my time.
Well, if he's one of those actors who literally was matched up by the studios with actresses to be seen in public with, because they wanted to hide the fact that he was gay. And,
so the studios knew about this.
Oh yeah, Natalie Wood was actually in big air quotes dating him for years, and they never actually dated. It was just there was an understanding that they would be seen in public with each other, and just weird stuff like that, and it's gotta be yeah. Anyway, it's got to be a horrible thing to have to live.
Yeah.
Like that. I guess is all I'll say.
Speaking of horrible ways to live, I watched The Cured, which is about zombies who have been rehabilitated back into humans.
So tell us about that.
I was waiting for someone's reaction.
Yeah, my reaction was kind of shock.
Just giving me the floor to okay. Well, the movie takes place sometime in the not too distant future, or maybe in the not too distant now, in Ireland, where previously for the last few years there's been an outbreak of a certain kind of disease that turns people essentially into 28 Days Later style zombies. Where they run around, eating people, that kind of thing, or turning people into other, zombies.
Right.
And it's called The Cured because there has been a discovery of an antidote that will turn zombies back into who they used to be, and they will remember everything they did as a zombie. And so this movie follows a couple of individuals who have been cured of the zombie affliction, and have now returned home or being reintegrated into society. However, society is rejecting them for the most part. They feel like, these people are monsters. They shouldn't be released. Oh my God, what if their blood gets on my kid's face or something? Like,
is their blood still contagious or something?
No, it isn't. As a matter of fact, if there are other zombies, they're recognized by the other zombies as still being zombies.
Oh, so not only are they cured, but they're
technically immune.
Yeah. Wow.
In a way, to the thing now. So, but they're seen as pariahs because of what they, essentially did, even if it was beyond their control. And so one guy in particular, to be reintegrated into society, he is reintroduced to his now dead brother's wife and child. The wife is played by Ellen Page, and as an American, and she's now Irish, but she's not playing an Irish person. She's like an American immigrant in Ireland, or something. And so they live together, and it's a very rocky relationship because there's a secret he has that he hasn't told her, but his other zombie friend who he hunted with in a pack knows about, and is like, don't tell her, otherwise your whole thing is ruined there. So the movie's kind of about
what
guilt.
You're saying is he ate one of her family or something like that.
Yes, and they do flashback to it a couple times to they hint at it, they flash back to early moments of it, and then they do a big reveal of it. And it's not so much what he did, but it's how it happened. This movie's very much about toxic relationships with other people. There's this movement going on in the movie, underground, of people who are cured, who are looking for political change. And they're being led by this guy's friend, who has also been rehabilitated, as they say, But as the movie goes on, you kind of find out that this guy is very manipulative, very much still kind of a monster. Like he was always a monster, maybe, but the zombie thing just kind of brought it out to the forefront. He's very conniving. He's very convincing and all that stuff. And this guy's like, he's like, I'm not going to fall for this shit anymore. So it's like breaking the chains of toxic relationships, so to speak. But the movie is also very much about, as I said before, the society has rejected these people and they put them behind fences. To reintegrate them into society, they're given stupid menial jobs like not that janitorial jobs are stupid. I just mean these people used to be doing something else. They used to be more professional, or they used to be doing something they actually cared about. Now they're doing like menial jobs, jobs.
Second-class citizens.
Second-class citizens, yes. And they don't like it, of course. So the movie very much is kind of how we treat people, in general, whether they are ex-convicts or they have HIV or full-blown AIDS even. It's kind of, the movie kind of has a statement to make about that. Where the movie falters is by the midpoint when we don't really know who to root for anymore. There's this big shift that happens in the midway through where, and I kind of hinted at this when I said one of the characters is manipulative and conniving and all that, who's the leader of this resistance. The resistance sort of becomes like a terrorist organization, and they're seen as a terrorist organization, and you don't really think that at first, but as the movie progresses, they get more and more aggressive and militant, and you're not really sure who's right or wrong, or if anyone's right or wrong in this specific scenario. And it's very bewildering to think of it in those ways, because normally, I personally would be like on the ex-convict side, like let's give this guy a chance, or on the person who has HIV or AIDS, like this doesn't make them less human. They didn't mean to get that disease. They just have it now. As long as they play it safe, no one else is going to get infected. It's fine. That kind of thing. But in this case, it's in this case those cured people are cured, but what their plan eventually ends up being represents a big danger to basically humanity. And I'm like, okay, well, in that specific scenario, I would say keep them away from certain places of the city. Suffice to say, the movie gets very violent and very gory at a certain point, which is good because
for a zombie movie, right?
For a zombie movie, it's got to include certain bits, but and it's creepily. I called it in my rating of the movie creepily poignant. How it dredges up these issues of forgiveness, redemption, guilt, community, and group thinking and stuff like that. But I don't know. It gets messy towards the middle, like I said, where all that starts to blur and everyone is wrong or no one is right. You know what I mean? This movie has a lot of depressing imagery. It's just, it takes place in Ireland, so there's not going to be much sunlight. It's just all foggy and smog and, misty and all that. So it's not a bright movie. It's already kind of like your eyes are dimming, but there, even at the end, there's still kind of a hope to be had that somehow things are going to be okay even afterwards. It's surprising. It's definitely creepy, as I said before, and I don't know how many theaters it's playing in or it's going to be playing in, but I think it's making the rounds right now across the country. I know it's going to be playing at theaters near me very soon, but if it happens to come anywhere near you or anyone who is listening to this, I actually would recommend it. It's a nice little surprise of a horror film. It's more dramatic it's more drama than it is horror. But when the horror hits, it gets chaotic. It gets crazy.
Yeah, I always enjoy when movies kind of take a twist on the zombie formula, and this is an intriguing look at that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's not zombie ass Toilet of the Dead or anything like that. It's
Oh God.
Have you seen that? I haven't seen it. I just know the title.
I've not seen it. I just know that it's made by the same person who did Robo Geisha.
Okay.
So take that for what you will.
It's taking it in the worst direction possible. Yeah, but
and then there was the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Maggie.
Maggie.
I think is what'd you call it?
Yeah. Tammy. I was like, no, that's
that's the other movie that's kind of about zombies.
But yeah, I mean, Maggie was an interesting look at it, and there's this really cool indie. I think it's a Canadian movie from the early 2000s called Fido. Have you ever seen that?
I've heard of it. It's got the guy from what's his name? Bill. I can't think of his name, but he's in the Boondock Saints. He plays the dad.
Oh, Billy Connolly's in it. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill Connolly.
Yeah, but Fido. For those who don't know, it's set in like a 1950s alternate universe, and it takes place after the zombies have already been beaten by humanity, and zombies are now essentially like pets. And so it's like watching an episode of the Donna Reed show, but where the housewife brings home a pet that the husband doesn't want, and they've got to deal with it. And Fido is a
It's kind of like the end of Shaun of the Dead.
I was just gonna say that. You took the words out of my mouth.
They trained the zombies to be grocery cart pullers, and they're like, I'm dating a zombie now, or they're flipping.
They put him on that slip and slide game show.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It just becomes goofy.
It's like that. It's very
not to cut you off, Ken, but also you got to remember at the end of the movie, he's got Nick Park's character Ed in his shed, so that's basically his pet. He goes out there and plays video games with him.
Well,
Nick Park.
Not Nick Park. Nick
Frost. I fucked up.
Nick Frost. Yeah, he's got him chained up, playing video games with him, and he tries to take a bite out of him, but then Simon Pegg's like, "Hey, back to the game."
Yeah.
The zombie Nick Frost is like, "Oh,
all right."
So there's almost like a hope that maybe he'll get his senses back or something. But
I'm surprised you guys haven't brought up that Warm Bodies, because that kind of has elements of this.
It does, but Warm Bodies sucks, so we'll move on from that.
Yeah, it's kind of.
But it had some elements in it that could have been promising, but it was so twee. It was.
I've heard that the book of it is better, but I'm
probably not.
They say that every time those young adult romance movies come out. And never got past the whole thing of romance with a freaking zombie. I mean, that's necrophilia.
Well, I don't think she fucks the zombie. It's more like, more of an affection.
No,
I laughed at both sex scenes in The Shape of Water. I mean, I still love the movie, don't get me wrong, but when I first watched it, I laughed at both scenes. It's
a little awkward at first because very awkward at first because it's a fish monster, but it's not like it's not a humanoid. It's not like it's a being made of light or something, or a tentacle monster. It still looks like a guy,
She sells it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, Sally Hawkins sells it. Yeah. The only part that creeped me out a little bit was that it wasn't clear at that point when she has sex with the fish man that if he knows how to speak English yet, or if he understands sign language yet, because it's like otherwise you're just raping an animal.
Oh God.
But that's not. But we learned by the end of the movie he knows sign language, and so he understands what this relationship is. And spoilers.
I think they establish his knowledge of sign language prior to that.
Well, he knows some kind of a language that's easy to decipher, but sign language is something he slowly picks up, just by being with her. And then it's like, oh, okay, everything's fine. He understands this relationship. It's cool.
It is fine. Yeah, everything is fine.
Yeah, this is certainly not.
Don't bring up that movie. I really want to see that movie so badly.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet either.
It is fine. Everything is fine. I saw What Is It, but I haven't seen the.
Okay, for a split second, I knew that you were talking about what Bill Leon said, but I was about to reference the movie Zoo, the documentary, and I was like,
I've seen the documentary Zoo. That's a fucked up documentary.
Is that about like zoophilia?
Yes.
And
as a matter of fact, it's about a very infamous bit of zoophilia in which a guy was killed having sex with a horse. Basically,
the horse was having sex with him.
Yes, the horse drilled him in very hard to the point where his internal organs got fucked up, and he died at the hospital.
Oh my god!
And there's even a video of the very incident where that happens.
It was a pretty popular internet video in the early 2000s called Mr. Hands.
It's just they show a little bit of it in the documentary, like a very quick, clip of it, and it's very unsettling. But it's I don't want to say funny, but there's that moment where he grits his teeth. And he's like, "Argh!"
You can say funny.
That I thought that kind of made me chuckle a little bit.
He shouldn't have been doing that.
But knowing
there were consequences to his actions.
Yes, knowing that it's real though, it kind of breaks my mind. But
you know what it is? It's the kind of thing that in college, your creepy roommate who watched all the weird internet stuff would show you, and you'd be like, "Oh no,
oh no, two girls, one cup. Oh no."
I'm only thinking of like Titus, where there's a scene in Titus where his dad is like, he's about to stick a penny in the light socket, and the mother's trying to tell him no, and the dad's like, no, and he does it, and he's like, you won't do that again, will you?
Yeah, but this is different though. The horse could actually hurt you.
He shouldn't have been fucking. Listen, I got a bias about horses. They're huge, powerful animals that don't really seem to have the best perception of like their space and their physicality. I would not go near a fucking horse. That's just me. They seem like
they're
have you ever been in a room with a Great Dane?
Yes,
probably. Yeah.
You know how Great Danes don't really realize how big they are, and they kind of like knock into shit. Like that's how I see a horse.
That's most dogs. Like they'll jump on you, if not thinking that they're not a puppy anymore.
Yeah. I'm
that
just
kind
saying,
of thing.
Horses remind me of Great Danes in that, like, I'm not entirely sure most horses are completely aware of like how big and powerful they are.
I've seen interviews with adult film actresses. No, not with horses. Yeah,
with Bojack.
With Mr. Horse. No, sir, I don't like it. I've seen interviews with adult film stars, and they're asked about bestiality sometimes, like, would you do it? And usually they say no. That's just fucking disgusting. But this one in particular was like, there were two of them. One said, I can't say, if the guy I'm with thinks that I should do it, I might do it. And the other one was like, yeah, I'd do it just for the sake of telling someone that I did it. I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's something to brag about? Yeah, I got a fucking face full of that.
This is all very uncomfortable stuff.
The road.
Yes, I know, but it goes back to Clerks 2 when that line when Randall's setting up the
donkey show.
The donkey show, and he's like, I want to find out if a chick with a mouthful of donkey spunk swallows.
Oh boy.
That was the point where that film critic walked out of the theater, was like, fuck this, I'm out.
For some reason, I Googled Kevin Smith the other day, and I was reading his Wikipedia page. He could not sell a Mallrats TV show to any network.
Yeah.
What? That's ridiculous. Like
he wanted to call it Mallbrats.
That's a bad title, but I feel like anything with Jay and Silent Bob, like Netflix would probably buy that, but they were,
except
he's kind of destroyed his reputation.
Yeah, every single network saw what his most recent film was, and
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
and what they said was, so this is the version of you that you've been performing, and we do not want to give you another penny.
Well, he's been directing TV lately, like The Flash.
Yeah, because he needs
that was
money.
Like 2 years ago, wasn't it?
No, he's still been doing The Flash.
Oh, okay.
And apparently he's doing a good job. People seem to, not think he's,
He's content with his podcast network, and
he'll always have a special place in my heart. But it's just he's not been on the best track record lately, and I do kind of legitimately feel bad that like he wants to make these sequels to these beloved movies, and no studio wants to touch it. Like Clerks 3.
Actually, Clerks 3 could have happened, but he kind of hinted that an actor didn't want to be in it anymore. I think it's Randall.
Yeah, I was going to say, because he was reluctant to do the second one.
I think it's Jeff Anderson, yeah. And apparently this one was going to focus on Randall, like a lot, like on Randall's family and stuff.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's probably not where you want to go. Like, I think Clerks 2 was enough. Like, I'd go see a third one, but that's just because I feel an obligation to the Clerks series. But Clerks 2 capped it off very well. That was perfect. You know.
Apparently, he's filming a movie as a director right now called Kilroy Was Here. And
so no Moose Jaws. That's scrapped now.
Well, it's still listed on IMDb as announced, but that means nothing.
Yeah, that just means like he was smoking pot one day and said it on a podcast.
He said it more than once, but
Jaws with the moose.
That's that's enough. I mean, well, not for Kevin Smith, that's enough. But again, we've brought up Trauma. Give that premise to Lloyd Kaufman. He'd make a fucking great Moose Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It would have a political message to it, as he would call it.
Yeah, and by the way, the cast, according to IMDb, stars, yes, Johnny Depp's daughter and Kevin Smith's daughter. So I will not be seeing it if that is
the try and save or whatever.
I actually liked their chemistry with each other. I just hated the rest of the movie.
Right. I can attest to that. I mean, like, I watch Yoga Hosers and I'm like, it didn't have to be this way, really. I mean,
it could have been a cute, poppy little stupid movie, you know, but instead it ended up just being a horrible disaster.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yes.
Rest in peace, Kevin Smith's writing career.
So we went off on quite a few tangents there.
Yeah. Well, we got like 10 minutes left, or 11 minutes actually. So, what's the breadwinner?
Yeah, I feel like we buried the lead here.
What's the breadwinner?
The breadwinner is not about horse fucking.
Yeah.
Or about yoga hosers.
I almost don't even want to talk about it on this episode, given what we've just gone through.
Okay, maybe we should just end it then. Let's just end this podcast episode. Thank you for joining us, everyone.
You know what? I just looked at what's coming out this weekend. We're going to save the breadwinner for next week because
there's just we got Annihilation this weekend, don't we? That's going to be. I'm hyped for that.
Yeah, I mean that's it though. So,
is there anything else coming out this weekend?
Every Day, which I've never heard of.
Okay.
But it's an Orion Pictures release, so you know it's going to be
good. Yeah, I think I did hear about this because it had Orion listed. I was like, what?
Orion
was, yeah.
And Game Night.
Oh, no, I'm not watching that.
I mean, I'm not going to go to the theater to see it, but I might on demand or something when it comes out.
Jason Bateman, Rachel McAdams, Game Night.
Yeah, and it's funny. I confused. I can't remember. I think it was The Disaster Artist. They showed a trailer for Game Night and a trailer for Blockers starring John Cena. So I confused those two movies. Every time I hear about Game Night, I'm like, John Cena's in that, right?
Well, let me go ahead and then end the podcast by discussing really quickly. I had a chance to watch the Oscar-nominated documentaries. I watched 3 of the 5 of them. There are currently 4 of the 5 available on either Netflix or Amazon. And the 5th one, which is Faces Places, is not available fucking anywhere.
It's going to be playing, I think, near me during the New Orleans French Film Festival.
Yeah.
They're doing like an Agnes Varda thing.
If you have an opportunity to see it, then by all means jump on it, because it's like not even Zach has found it, and he found a theater playing The Breadwinner, and that was a goddamn success.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Faces Places. But what were the 3 that you saw?
So I saw. I'm going to go in order of how I watched them. I started Monday with Last Men in Aleppo.
Oh, this is supposed to be really good.
This is, first of all, I'm going to say that this is easily my favorite of the 3 that I watched, but at the same time, it's also the toughest watch because it was a documentary that was filmed during the Syrian Civil War, which just ended recently, and it's still, it's still a fucked up situation down there. But
yeah.
sort of it's spun off as a feature film after there was that documentary short that came out a year or two ago from Netflix called The White Helmets.
Yeah.
And the White Helmets was a organization of civilians living within Syria during the war, and their entire purpose was saving the lives of civilians. So when a bombing occurred, when an attack occurred, they would go right there into ground zero of the bombing, and they would drag bodies out, sometimes parts of bodies, but the goal was to save as many lives as they could possibly save. And these were civilians who basically dedicated their life to not getting involved in the specific not getting involved in the war itself. Their war was saving lives. And Last Men in Aleppo follows up on the story of a few of those people and the tragedies of that is their everyday life, because the situation was only getting worse for them. I don't want to spoil too much, but not everyone who starts off as characters that this documentary follows survive until the end of the film.
Ooh.
And it is horrifying because this is a ground zero documentary. The people filming it are in just as much danger, and it's legitimately scary. And what hits home even more is these guys who are members of the White Helmets have their families there, because they really, where else are they going to send their families? They may be separated permanently if they do that. And so you have these scenes where in one moment a character is talking to his daughter over the phone and smiling and, waxing nostalgic on how things were before the war started. And the next scene, that character doesn't show up again because that character was killed. And I say character, I shouldn't.
Person, yeah.
These are hurt people. This movie is hard to watch, but it's also a very important film to watch. One of the most affecting documentaries I've ever seen, and you will not unsee it. It sticks in your mind. There's some disturbing content, and here's the thing: the movie is not exploitive. You're not seeing the worst gore that this war is doing. You do, I mean, there are some bodies here and there, and you see body parts here and there, but it's not like focusing on that. It's more focusing on the people and the reactions to what's going on. But that's all you need. It is a gut punch of a movie, and honestly, this movie doesn't just deserve an Academy Award for Best Documentary. This movie deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, as far as I'm concerned.
Is this one on Amazon or Netflix?
It's on
Netflix.
Amazon. Sorry, Netflix. Sorry, Netflix.
Okay.
It's a Netflix original. So just be prepared when you go into this movie that it's not going to be easy to watch, but it's going to demonstrate to you what these people did during a situation that was just untenable, and their commitment to saving the lives of people, and the little things they do to keep themselves going every day, like buying some fish and making a fish fountain. It becomes like this whole thing for them, because it's that little bit that keeps them going.
Right.
As Russian jet planes fly over and just firebomb everything in their vicinity. And yeah, I do want you guys to see it. It's not going to be easy, but you do need to see it.
Okay. Definitely.
So anyway, we move on to films that are both very good and accomplished documentaries of their own. They're just on a different level, because whereas this film, the amazing thing and the compelling thing about Last Men in Aleppo was the fact that documentary was made at all, that this person chose to continue filming and capture that material. These documentaries are amazing in their own way, for much more humble reasons.
I do believe you said about this, the act of killing. You said the same thing, like it deserves a Nobel Peace Prize.
and for another reason. The act of killing does it because it highlights. You're right. I did say that. Come to think of it, but yeah, the act of killing did it because it highlights the absurdity of how people are able to reason away doing horrible things like genocide and live with it their entire life, just as a normal person. This, on the other hand, shows the horrors of war in all of its unvarnished hell. And it shows the civilian cost, and it makes a very blatant. You know what it does? It's not dissimilar to, and this isn't a documentary, but prior to World War II ramping up, there was a animated short film called Goodwill to Men. If you've never heard of it. It was an anti-war animated film that highlights, how horrible war is, and it was an attempt to try to ward off war happening, and it didn't succeed. But this documentary does that very same thing. It's another warning to humanity of how just there is no purpose to it, and I would argue that anyone who watched Last Men in Aleppo would no longer have any interest in continuing warfare in any form. So we move to these documentaries, which are less depressing and more just compelling in their own ways. Icarus is a documentary film by Brian Fogel.
This is the one about the Russian
doping scandal.
Yeah,
yes.
Right.
So Brian Fogel was he directed the movie Zootopia, for instance, a few years back, and he's done some stuff, and he had this aspiration. He set out to make kind of like the Super Size Me of steroids. So this is how Icarus begins. It begins with him explaining that he's competed in a bunch of amateur biking competitions, and he's seen how rampant doping is in biking. He was inspired by Lance Armstrong getting away with it as long as he could. He said, I'm going to hire an expert who's going to assist me in doping the shit out of myself, and then I'm going to enter a competition.
Yeah. What?
With the idea being trying to see how easy it is to get away with being on steroids. That's how the movie begins. And this is what's great, because it begins with a concept that I think would be interesting, but very self-satisfying and not really deep in any major way. It would just prove what we already know, that it's easy to get away with steroid use. But the guy that he hires to assist him is this guy named Dr. Grigory Rodchenkov, who at the time he hired him was in charge of the World Doping Agency's state-sponsored review program in Russia. And it just happens to be that Rodchenkov was responsible for essentially creating and facilitating Russia's elaborate system of steroid use amongst almost all of its athletes. The estimate is something like 95 to 99% of Russian athletes performing in international competition have been using steroids, and this Russian guy is responsible for administering that program for them.
Whoa.
And so this guy Fogel, who's doing this documentary, forms a bond with Rodchenkov, and they decide, fuck it, we're going to blow the whistle on all of this. So Rodchenkov goes public with his allegations, not just allegations, but with his proof of what he's been doing. And it's a public embarrassment for Russia, to the point where he is in the witness protection program in the United States because he's deathly afraid that Russia is going to murder him, that Vladimir Putin himself has ordered his death. It's not, it's not public that he's ordered his death, but Putin probably has.
Right.
And this movie goes from starting off as like, it's like if this is what it is. It's like if halfway into the movie Super Size Me, it turns out that the CEO of McDonald's wanted wanted to murder him. And the rest of the movie turns into like a Robert Ludlum novel or something. It turns into essentially like an espionage thriller where they're just trying desperately to figure out how he's going to get safely to where he needs to be, how they're going to go public in a way that's not going to destroy his family, and just all of this. It is a fascinating documentary. Not on the emotionally impactful level of Last Men in Aleppo, but is, as someone who doesn't really care about sports, what I find fascinating is the lengths that Russia has gone to cheat in something that is ultimately not that important, which is games. Think about this. They, in order to get as many medals and international awards as possible, they set up this entire program to cheat. It's like, it's the equivalent of, like people who cheat in like video games, that they enter cheat codes and such. It's pretty much understood that if you do that and you beat the game with cheats, you didn't really beat the game. What you did was you cheated your way to success. And it's just as pathetic as that. Is, and now don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with using cheat codes in a video game as long as you're not making the bold claim that you beat the game. You know what I mean?
I'm sure you know about this, but I'm perusing Brian Fogel's Wikipedia page. It says in December 2017, the entire Russian national team was banned from participating in the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And also, more interesting, in August 2017, Fogel met with members of the U.S. Congress and Senate to discuss the extent of Russian tampering in global affairs, specifically the 2016 U.S. election.
Yes. Because he has an insider into how Russia's the former KGB, the secret police within Russia, have orchestrated all this.
Right.
So this documentary ends up feeling like you're watching an espionage thriller in a lot of ways. I recommend it. And if you're looking for a documentary nominated for an Oscar this year that is just a cracking good piece of entertainment that tells a really neat story about this, Icarus I recommend.
Is this one on Netflix or Amazon?
It's on Netflix. And
okay.
Now this next film is on Amazon. This documentary by Steve James of Hoop Dreams fame.
Is this free on Amazon, or do you have to pay for this?
It's Prime.
It's not everything on Prime is free. I was just asking.
No. It
has the Prime thing.
It's awesome. That's cool. Okay.
And this documentary is called Abacus: Small Enough to Jail, which is a play on Too Big to Fail.
Yeah. This is the one about the one bank that actually did get charged and I think prosecuted for the what happened in 2008, right?
Well, yeah. What's more is this is a documentary that follows Abacus Abacus Federal Savings Bank is a family-owned community bank. It's owned by this Chinese American family, and they cater to mostly Chinese American customers in Manhattan's Chinatown. And it is the only bank charged as a result of the subprime mortgage crisis.
Which is ridiculous, because every bank should have been. Making
things even more ridiculous, Abacus was totally not guilty. So in this entire subprime mortgage crisis, the bank that they chose to go after was one that, okay, you know what, they admittedly, and even self-admittedly, they made a few mistakes, but their default rate was, I think they reference in the movie that of 3,000 loans they wrote for mortgages in a single year, 9 of them went into default. And that is an incredibly good record to have as a bank. No other bank major bank compares to that. And so Steve James, who, as I mentioned, did Hoop Dreams, is a documentarian who is great at following the people involved in a situation and showing how, and humanizing them. And this is the only I never expected to see a documentary about a bank where I ended up trusting the bank, and I ended up thinking, you know what, these are some nice people. Well, this movie does it, and it's a really compelling movie. Whereas Icarus is a documentary that essentially turns into a political thriller, Abacus is a documentary that turns into a courtroom drama thriller. And, well, not really thriller, but drama. And it's just this very personal story about this family who, because one or two lenders within their bank did some illegal moves, their entire bank got blamed for it, and it was the start of a 5-year legal battle in which their company they built from the ground up was threatened with these horrible sanctions that could have destroyed them, and their reputation was, of course, certainly hurt, because they were, it's not often that a bank is sued, or not sued, is criminally charged, not sued.
Yeah.
It's not often the bank is criminally charged. And the argument that they make is that Abacus, the phrase "small enough to jail" is made because Abacus is this tiny bank. In the movie they point out that it is like the 2,700 and whatever largest bank in America. So it's this tiny little bank, and yet in their infinite wisdom, New York prosecutors from Manhattan's district attorney's office decide to indict them over, Fannie Mae or any bank that, like
Goldman Sachs,
Citibank, any major bank out there that just got themselves into some shit.
That definitely had their hands in something rotten,
Yeah. So anyway, Abacus is just simply, a fascinating documentary, and I highly recommend you check it out.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and say, because I don't think you have watched it yet, Ken, but I know you have HBO Go, right?
I do.
I brought it up like 3 times on the show before, so excuse me for bringing it up again. But Mommy, Dead and Dearest is a documentary that HBO made about this crazy fucking story. I don't think it would probably hold up to these ones you're talking about, especially in terms of like what the Academy would want to nominate. But that was like my tickled of this year, just because it's like, I didn't know the story going in, and the more information it gives you, the more you're just like, what?
Yeah, I definitely will give that a look. Right now my focus is getting the other Oscar-nominated docs seen, but I will as soon as I have an opportunity.
Oh yeah. I'm just saying, I recommend it. I put it on my top 10 list. I really enjoyed it. I've watched it like 3 or 4 times at this point. But I think I'm going to watch Icarus tonight. You've sold me on that.
All right. Yeah, definitely let me know what you think of it when you watch it. Les Men in Aleppo, I do think you should see it, Bill. It's not going to be an easy watch, but it's a socially important film.
I believe it. I don't know if I'm ready for like that realism, that gritty footage,
I don't think anyone's ready for it ultimately.
That's true. That's true.
It's worth watching though, because it's truthful, and it's the definition of truthful, really.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so that is the end of this Pubcast episode.
Did you guys, because I had cut out when we were talking polyester, did we talk about the Saturday's midnight movies?
So this coming Saturday evening, we have another double feature coming up, except what we're going to do this time is where I'm picking the movies, and I'm sort of jumping off on Bill Leon's choices with, I think, films that carry the theme to an extent. I'm going to have a rock opera, and that is Hedwig and the Angry Inch, followed by
Short Bus.
We'll save that for yours.
Okay. If you want to pick that one, and I was going to say, Bill, next Saturday, if you want to pick a double feature.
Okay, all right, that's a challenge. I'll think of something.
I don't want to watch Short Bus, but
I'm not going to pick Short Bus. I was just throwing it out there.
Well, I'm going to follow it with Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story,
which you've brought up on this show many, many times before, and it is very difficult to find.
Or you can just go to YouTube, and it's been up for 3 years. And no one's
it used to be very hard to find.
Don't say it too loud, because it better still be up there this Saturday. But yeah, and by the way, Superstar is only like 43 minutes long, so
which is the story of Karen Carpenter's anorexia told through Barbie dolls.
Yep, as directed by Todd Haynes, who is one of the most interesting filmmakers indie filmmakers out there, and he's made quite a few music-based films. Music is kind of his MO. He did I'm Not There.
That was successful, wasn't it? I mean, mildly successful.
Yeah. I mean, as far as an indie film, he did that. He also directed Sonic Youth Disappearer, I guess. He directed Velvet Goldmine.
That's like a fictional movie, right?
Right, but it's loosely based on a David Bowie-ish kind of.
Okay, I've never seen it, but I think I've seen Netflix recommend it to me or something like that.
But the main reason Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story, has never been seen in a legal sense is because he just does not have the rights to the Carpenter's songs, and he's throwing them in this movie.
Has he ever attempted to do a cut that doesn't have any copyrighted music?
I don't know how that would be. I mean, it's the Carpenters.
But you could hire a cover band, couldn't you? And just have like covers of it?
To me, that would just be besides the point. You got to have.
Okay, yeah, I understand. I mean, that's kind of the appeal of this film, is that it's so like guerrilla style in that approach, to where this has never been released on home video. Like, very few people have seen this film.
Being fair, there is in fact the IMDb poster image that they have is of a very chintzy looking DVD, which is probably not legal.
Right. How do you think that got distributed?
It didn't.
Oh, okay.
I would say it leaked. It's the same way the Rolling Stones documentary Cocksucker Blues got distributed, in that it cannot legally be.
It's just fans found it and put it out there.
Right. In fact, I'm just looking it up, and I'm
excited. I'm excited because I don't want to say you've hyped this film up like I'm hyped to a point that the movie can't satisfy, but I'm excited to see this for the first time. It sounds batshit crazy.
Mm-hmm. And I think you'll be surprised in how seriously it takes the material, despite the fact that it's Barbie dolls.
Right.
I dig stuff like that, so yeah, I'm excited to finally get to watch this.
All right, well, we'll see y'all next week on the movieboozer.com virtual Pubcast.
Virtual Pubcast.
I don't know why I'm doing
I don't know what voice you're doing.
It's sort of a I don't know.
This has been Walter Cronkite.
What about Dan Rather? Do a Dan Rather voice.
How does he sound? What does he say?
I forgot what Dan Rather sounds like.